There is a photograph you cannot see, but you know exists somewhere in the archives of your childhood. In it, a small figure sits at the edge of a family gathering. Adults talk in loud voices, their laughter rising and falling like waves against a shore. The child does not speak. The child has learned something the adults have not yet named, that silence is a kind of armor, that stillness makes you invisible, and invisibility keeps you safe. You recognize this child because you were this child. Perhaps you still are. You are in a meeting now, years and continents away from that living room. Someone asks for input. You have the answer forming perfectly in your mind, each word arranged like stones across a river. But your throat tightens. The sentence dissolves before it reaches your lips. You nod instead. You smile. You let someone else speak, and later you will lie awake, replaying the moment, speaking into the dark, what you could not say in the light. In love, you are the same. Your partner asks if you are happy. You say yes because the truth feels too heavy to place in their hands. You carry your sadness like a stone in your pocket, turning it over when no one is watching, letting it grow smooth with the friction of silence. You have been told you are a wonderful listener. What they do not know is that listening is easier than the terrifying act of being heard. When you enter a room, your nervous system performs a calculation before your conscious mind catches up. You scan faces for tension. You measure the temperature of the air. You assess whether it is safe to exist at full volume or whether you must make yourself smaller, quieter, less. This is not introversion. This is not shyness. This is something older and more deliberate. This is survival architecture, built brick by brick in a childhood where your voice was not a gift, but a risk. The silence you carry is not your personality. It is not who you are. It is a house you built to live in when the world outside was too loud or too cold. And somewhere inside that house, beneath layers of learned quiet, a child still sits, waiting for permission to speak. There is a name for what happened to you. It is called enforced silence, and it is not the same as choosing quiet. You are not bland. You are not empty. Inside your mind exists a universe of thoughts so intricate and alive that if someone could see them, they would be stunned by the architecture. You have opinions that could reshape conversations. You have feelings that burn with such clarity they could light a room. The problem is not what lives inside you. The problem is the bridge between inside and outside, a bridge that was dismantled stone by stone before you learned to build it back. The world calls children like you were easy. Adults smiled when you sat still at dinner tables, while other children ran and shrieked. Teachers loved you because you did not disrupt, did not demand, did not need. You were awarded gold stars for compliance, for being the child who required nothing. But we must look at this again with different eyes. A healthy child is meant to be loud. A healthy child takes up space without apology. A healthy child tests boundaries and asks why, and dissolves into tantrums when the world does not make sense. Excessive silence in childhood is not maturity. It is resignation. It is the white flag of a small, nervous system that has already learned the cost of being seen. You were called good, but good was a trap dressed as praise. Good meant convenient. Good meant invisible. Good meant you had already learned to abandon yourself. Now you are an adult, and people still call you a wonderful listener, but they do not see the exhaustion that follows. After every conversation, you return home and collapse, not because you hate people, but because your brain has been running 2 programs simultaneously. You were listening to them, yes, but you were also monitoring yourself. Every sentence you considered speaking passed through an internal checkpoint. Is this safe to say? Will this upset them? Will this make me too much? Your nervous system has been trained to treat your own voice as a potential threat. So you edit in real time, you soften, you erase. You perform the invisible labor of making yourself small enough to fit into the space others have left for you. This is why you are tired, not because you are weak, not because you are broken, but because you are doing the emotional work of 2 people, the one who listens and the one who silences the listener's own need to be heard. You are carrying a double weight that others do not see and most will never understand. And beneath all of this, beneath the learned quiet and the careful editing, there is still that child, still sitting, still waiting, still believing that silence is the price of love and that to speak would be to lose everything. To understand why you learn to stay quiet, we must return to the place where language is first born. Not in classrooms or books, but in the space between a child and the people who hold their survival in their hands. A child does not arrive in the world knowing whether their voice matters. They learn this, and they learn it in the architecture of home, in the way adults respond or do not respond, in the safety or danger that follows when they make a sound. There are patterns, different homes, different silences, but the lesson is always the same. Speaking has a cost, and sometimes that cost is too high to pay. In the first kind of home, the air itself is volatile. You learn to read weather systems in human faces. Your father's jaw tightens, and you know a storm is coming. Your mother's voice rises half an octave, and you understand that the next few minutes will determine whether you eat dinner in peace or whether plates will shatter against walls. These are the homes where children walk on eggshells, where every sound you make is a potential detonation. You learn young that noise draws attention, and attention in this house is a spotlight that burns. So you teach yourself to move through rooms like smoke. You make your footsteps weightless. You turn down the volume on your existence until you are barely there at all. The mechanism is elegant and terrible. Your nervous system, still forming, still soft, makes a calculation. Silence equals invisibility, and invisibility equals safety. If you do not laugh too loud, you will not remind him of whatever it is that makes him angry. If you do not cry when you fall, she will not call you weak or dramatic or too sensitive. If you become very still like a rabbit freezing in the presence of a predator, perhaps the danger will pass over you and find someone else. This is not a conscious choice. This is your body doing what bodies do when they are small and the world is large and unpredictable. This is the freeze response, an ancient survival mechanism that shuts you down before the threat can reach you. What you do not know then, but will learn later, is that this freezing becomes a groove worn deep into your nervous system. The vagus nerve, which runs from your brainstem down through your throat and into your chest, learns to constrict when danger appears. It closes your throat like a fist. This is why years later, when you are in conflict with someone you love, you cannot speak even when you want to. Your body remembers what your mind has tried to forget. The words are there, but the pathway is blocked by the ghost of an old fear. You are not choosing silence. You are locked inside it. In the second kind of home, there is no violence, but there is something equally devastating: absence. Your parents are not cruel, they are simply not there. Physically present but emotionally unreachable, moving through the house like figures in a dream. You fall and scrape your knee and no one comes. You bring home a drawing you made in school colors, bright and proud, and your mother glances at it for half a second before returning to her phone. Your father works late every night, and when he is home, he is tired, too tired for your questions, too tired for your stories. You learn that your needs are an inconvenience. You learn that your excitement is noise. So you stop bringing drawings home. You stop crying when you fall. You stop asking for what you need because you have learned the most painful lesson a child can learn, that asking changes nothing. This is called learned helplessness, and it is a kind of death that happens while you are still breathing. The child's brain is wired to seek connection, to cry out and be comforted, to reach and be met. But when the reaching is met with emptiness again and again, the brain rewrites itself. It learns that effort is pointless, that your voice disappears into a void, that you are at your core not important enough to be heard. So you conserve your energy. You stop trying. Silence becomes not just a behavior, but a belief: I do not matter. This belief will follow you into adulthood, into relationships where you cannot ask for what you need, into jobs where you cannot advocate for yourself, into a life where you are always smaller than you need to be, because somewhere deep inside you still believe that no one is listening anyway. In the third kind of home, there is no room for you because someone else is taking up all the space. Perhaps it is a parent whose emotions are so large and volatile that the entire family orbits around their moods. Perhaps it is a parent who needs you to be an extension of themselves, who cannot tolerate the idea that you might think differently, feel differently, want something they do not want for you. In this home, your job is not to be yourself. Your job is to reflect back what they need to see. When you express an opinion that contradicts theirs, you are not just wrong. You are betrayal. You are disrespect. You are proof that they have failed. So you learn to erase yourself. You learn to feel what they feel, want what they want. Become a mirror so perfect that your own face disappears. This is called enmeshment, and it is a kind of suffocation that looks like love. You are close, yes, but closeness is not the same as connection. You are needed, yes, but you are needed to be someone you are not. And the price of this conditional love is steep. You must kill your own voice before it can contradict theirs. You must learn to detect what they want before they ask for it to shape yourself into the child they need you to be. And because you are young and you need them, you do it. You dismantle your own selfhood piece by piece until you no longer know where they end and you begin. What all these homes have in common, despite their different textures of pain, is this: they teach you that your authentic self is too much, or not enough, or simply unwelcome. They teach you that love is something you earn through self-erasure, that to be safe, to be wanted, to be allowed to stay, you must make yourself quiet. And because you are a child and children are brilliant at survival, you learn the lesson perfectly. You become so good at silence that eventually you forget you are performing it. It becomes who you are. It becomes the only way you know how to be. The body keeps score. This is not metaphor. The trauma of enforced silence lives in your tissues, in the chronic tension of your jaw, in the tightness across your chest, in the way your voice sometimes shakes when you finally try to use it. The vagus nerve, that essential regulator of your nervous system, becomes dysregulated. It learns to shut you down, to constrict your throat, to flood you with the freeze response whenever speaking feels dangerous. And because your childhood taught you that speaking is always dangerous, the freeze response becomes your default. This is why sometimes, in moments when you most need to defend yourself or express a boundary or say the simple truth, your mind goes blank. Your body has taken over. Your nervous system has decided that silence is still the safest option, even when you are no longer that child, even when the danger is no longer real. But here is what no one tells you about the child who learned to stay quiet. That child also learned to see. While other children were speaking, you were watching. While they were taking up space with their noise and their needs, you were reading the room with the precision of a cartographer mapping dangerous terrain. You learned to detect the smallest shift in someone's expression, the micro-tension in a voice, the way air pressure changes in a room moments before conflict erupts. You became fluent in a language most people do not even know exists, the language of what is not being said. This is not a small thing. This is a superpower born from survival. You can walk into a space and within seconds understand the emotional architecture of everyone present. You know who is pretending to be fine. You know who is carrying grief they have not named. You know when someone's smile does not reach their eyes, when their laughter is a mask, when they are asking for help in a language only you can hear. This is the gift of the silent child, a nervous system calibrated to perceive what others miss. You are an empath, not because you chose to be, but because you had to be. Your survival depended on your ability to read the people who held your world in their hands. And while the other children were learning to speak their minds, you were building something else, an inner world so vast and intricate that it could contain everything you could not say out loud. You learned to live inside your own mind with a richness that people who have always had permission to speak will never fully understand. Your imagination became a refuge. Your capacity for deep reflection, for turning an idea over and examining it from every angle, for sitting with complexity without needing to resolve it immediately into words, this too is a form of wealth. You are capable of a kind of interior depth that makes you a natural writer, artist, thinker, creator of worlds. The silence forced you inward, and what you found there was not emptiness but an entire universe. There is also this: you learn to listen in a way that heals people. When someone speaks to you, you do not listen to respond. You listen to understand. You hold space for their pain without rushing to fix it or minimize it or redirect the conversation back to yourself. In a world where everyone is performing, where most conversations are just two people waiting for their turn to talk, you offer something rare: true presence. People feel this even if they cannot name it. They tell you things they have never told anyone else. They cry in front of you. They say you make them feel seen. And you do, because you know what it is to be invisible, and you will not let someone else disappear the way you did. But here is the truth that must be spoken now. Even though it is difficult, what saved you then is hurting you now. The silence that protected the child has become a prison for the adult. The invisibility that kept you safe has made you disappear from your own life. The armor you built brick by brick is now so heavy you can barely move beneath its weight. You are no longer that small person in a dangerous home. You have agency now. You have choices. You can leave rooms that feel unsafe. You can build relationships with people who will not punish you for having needs. You can speak, and even if someone does not like what you say, you will survive it. The child who learned to stay quiet deserves your gratitude. That child was brilliant. That child did what had to be done with the tools available. That child kept you alive, but you are not that child anymore. And the strategies that once protected you are now the very things preventing you from living fully. The silence has become its own kind of violence, a self-inflicted erasure that no longer serves you. It is time perhaps to thank the quiet child for their service, and gently, carefully to begin teaching them that the war is over, that they can rest now, that someone else, the adult you have become, can take over the work of protecting you. And that protection no longer requires silence. It requires the opposite. It requires your voice. The first step toward reclaiming your voice is not in your throat, it is in your body. You have spent so long disconnected from the physical act of speaking that you must relearn it the way a person recovering from an injury must relearn how to walk. This is not metaphor. The neural pathways that connect thought to speech have atrophied from disuse. Your vagus nerve, that essential highway of communication between brain and body, has learned to constrict at the moment of expression. So you begin not with words, but with sound itself. Find a room where you are alone. Close the door, place your hand on your throat and hum, just a low, steady tone, nothing more. Feel the vibration beneath your fingers. This is your body making noise, and the world is not ending. Your nervous system needs this information. It needs to learn that sound does not equal danger, that your voice is not a weapon that will destroy you. Hum in the shower. Hum while you drive. Let your body remember that it is capable of resonance, that you are an instrument designed to be heard. Then move to words. Speak to yourself in the mirror. It will feel absurd at first, childish even, but this is the work. Look at your own face and say simple, true things. I am tired. I am lonely. I am angry about what happened. Your reflection will not flinch. The mirror will not shatter. You are teaching your nervous system through repetition that speaking your truth does not lead to abandonment or punishment or pain. You are creating new data to override the old programming that has been running since childhood. The next step is harder because it involves other people. You must practice disappointment. This is the fear that has kept you silent, the belief that if you express a need or preference that conflicts with someone else's, you will lose them. So you must test this belief in small, controlled doses, the way someone afraid of water might start by putting their toes in the shallow end. When a friend asks where you want to eat dinner, do not say you do not care. Choose. Say the name of the place you actually want to go. When someone suggests a movie you have no interest in seeing, say so. Offer an alternative. Watch what happens next. Most of the time, nothing catastrophic occurs. They shrug. They say okay. They suggest a compromise. The world does not collapse because you stated a preference. The relationship does not end because you took up space. Sometimes someone will be annoyed or disappointed or hurt. This is the moment your nervous system has been preparing for your entire life, the moment it told you to avoid at all costs. But you must learn to survive this moment. You must discover that someone else's disappointment is not your responsibility to fix or prevent, that you can hold a boundary even when it makes someone uncomfortable, that their discomfort does not mean you have done something wrong. This is the reprogramming. Every time you speak your truth and survive the aftermath, you are teaching your brain that you are safe, even when you are not silent. There is also the work that happens on paper. What cannot yet be spoken can sometimes be written. Take a notebook and write letters you will never send. Write to the parents who taught you that silence was survival. Tell them what you could not say then. Tell them about the child who sat so quietly at the dinner table, who learned to make themselves small, who believed their voice was a burden. Let the anger come if it needs to. Let the grief pour out. You are not writing to forgive or to heal the relationship. You are writing to release what has been trapped in your throat for decades. You are giving language to the wordless pain, and language is the first step toward freedom. And finally, there is the work of reparenting. When you feel the old fear rising, when your throat tightens and the words dissolve before they can form, speak to the frightened child inside you the way you needed someone to speak to you then. Tell them, I am here now. You are safe. You are allowed to speak. You are allowed to take up space. You are allowed to need things and want things and disagree with things. Anyone who cannot handle your authentic voice is not your person, and their leaving is not your loss. You do not need to be quiet anymore. The danger has passed. The home you live in now is one you have built, and in this home, your voice is not a risk. It is a right. There is a parable about a bird who lived in a cage so long that when the door finally opened, it did not fly. It sat on its perch looking at the sky through bars that were no longer there, believing the world beyond was still impossible to reach. You are that bird. The cage of your childhood is gone. The parents who required your silence no longer control your days. The rooms where speaking was dangerous are rooms you no longer live in, but you are still sitting on the perch. You are still performing the silence that once kept you alive, not because you must, but because you have forgotten any other way to be. The sky is not dangerous. The sky is waiting. Somewhere in the world right now, there is a conversation that needs your perspective. There is a room that needs your presence. There is a person who needs to hear the exact words that are caught in your throat, the truth you have been carrying like a secret, the insight that only you can offer because only you have lived inside your particular pain and survived. The world is incomplete without your voice. Not the voice you think people want to hear, not the careful edited version, the real one, the one that shakes sometimes, the one that says difficult true things, the one that takes up space without apologizing for it. You do not need to shout. You do not need to be loud or confident or certain. You can start with a whisper. You can start with a single true sentence spoken in a moment when you would normally stay silent. I feel differently. I need something else. I am not okay. These small acts of honesty are how you teach yourself that you will not die from being known, that being seen does not lead to destruction, that your voice, which you have been told in 1,000 wordless ways was too much or not enough, is actually exactly what it needs to be yours. You deserve to be heard. Not because you have earned it through goodness or compliance, or making yourself small, not because you have suffered enough to justify taking up space, but because you exist, because you are here. Because somewhere inside the quiet there is still a child waiting for permission to speak, and the only person who can give that permission now is you. The cage is open. It has been open for years. It is time to fly.